Hey, and welcome, my friend, to the next episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, live feed Q&A. I'm Matt Schifferly, back from my time of being sick and ill. My apologies last week for having that raspiness in my voice, but I am feeling much better here. And today we are going to unleash more topic or information on the topic on Beautiful Strength, my upcoming program that I'm still hard at work on, all about utilizing exercise and calisthenics to, well, essentially become more attractive, and why so much of the common advice and conventional approaches in our fitness culture actually work against you in order to do that. As always, I'll be answering your questions and giving you some live one-on-one coaching here with the questions that you bring into the comment section. So ask away. But as the topic of the day brings up is which should you focus on first, losing fat and building muscle? Because fundamentally, changing the aesthetics of your physique boil down to those two tissues. And moreover, it's a lot simpler than a lot of the ideas out there in our fitness culture will make it sound. There's a lot of stuff out there about, it's like, oh, you train this way to shape and sculpt and tone and build versus shrink and all these other mumbo jumbo ideas. And most of it is just marketing mumbo nonsense to try to sell you things that you don't really need. Because ultimately, building out your physique boils down to fat volume and muscle mass. And moreover, we're all playing the same game. We're all trying to manage or decrease the amount of fat on our body and increase the amount of muscle. It doesn't matter if you're a professional bodybuilder, you just want to tone up, quote unquote, you just want to look better naked, whatever the case may be, no matter what physique goals you have, we're all playing the same game of less fat, more muscle, full stop. And there's not really a whole lot of different ways you can do that. It's a lot of times people are like, well, I want to have that kind of physique and this kind of physique, and I want to look more like this guy and not like that guy. Most of the times, the differences in one physique to another, if it's not down to fat and muscle volume, then it's just simply down to genetics. We have our genetic predisposition for what type of body build we may have, and then we're just modifying that thing that we have. And kind of a more general way of thinking about it is the amount of fat on our body is a big influence over our overall body size, and muscle mass is much more of an influence over our body shape. So think about it this way. Do you want to make your body bigger or smaller? Well, that's about fat. And do you want to make your body shapely, curvature, and all that sort of thing? Then that's more about muscle. Yes, you can absolutely have the potential to find people like, oh, I got so much bigger and massive with muscle. But by and large, that's not going to be most individuals. Building muscle is extremely difficult to do for most individuals. And for the most part, you're not going to build enough to make that much difference in your body size unless you have a disposition for putting on a lot of muscle, which is most people don't fit that category. I certainly don't. So when we're looking at what should you do, a lot of it kind of depends on what your physique goals are. What do you want to do as far as, do you want to change your size? Do you want to change your shape? However, many people make the mistake of focusing too much on fat loss first. Even if you are overweight and you carry a significant amount of fat on your body, it might theoretically make sense to be like, well, I've got like 40, 50 pounds to lose. I'm going to focus on that first. But there are a number of reasons why that may be a very big mistake, as we'll go into here. And I'll be answering questions. So hit your questions up here. A couple of little things real quick. DS, what does your suspension program cover? Everything. Basically, suspension straps, right? These bad boys are a weight machine that fits in your pocket. That's what my suspension calisthenics book is all about, that you can get in paperback and Kindle version, PDF on the rdp.com. Link is down below. Basically, suspension straps are a weight machine that is portable. And that book covers everything you need to know about the basics of the exercises and setup and how to utilize your suspension straps to the best of your ability, particularly for building muscle and strength. King of Legion said, how to build strength without gaining weight. So the fundamental stimulus for building muscle comes from challenging your work capacity. And that is a combination of volume and tension or intensity. Strength is just the intensity side. So make your muscles contract extremely hard and just train in such a way that you're not exhausting the muscle out. Now, you're going to gain some muscle to some degree, but people largely overestimate how much that really matters. Like a lot of times people will be like, oh, I gained 10 pounds of muscle. And that's not really going to have a huge difference in your physique to a large degree. Sometimes it needs to be closer to 15, 20 pounds to really notice something. So you're going to build muscle if you are trying to build strength, especially if you're fairly new to it. But it's not going to be like you're not going to get massive and stuff. A lot of people think of building muscle as this runaway process that's going to be like out of control and suddenly you're going to be getting huge and everything. And the reality is that muscle is extremely hard for most people to build to any degree. So focus on generating a lot of tension in the muscle and just stay away from high fatigue types of programming where you're using a ton of volume and bringing yourself closer to the fatigue of muscular failure, in other words. DS is following up saying, so in other words, gymnastics rings. Yeah, gymnastics rings, suspension straps, they're basically the same thing. They are suspension systems. Gymnastics rings are suspension systems, as are also climbing ropes. But I much prefer the suspension straps for several reasons. Largely, it's just personal preference. Most things in fitness should be based on preference more than anything else. But I just like the handles. I think they're a heck of a lot more comfortable. And you also have the foot loops as well, and the handles will rotate. So I've used gymnastics rings and suspension straps throughout my career, but when given the choice, I'll take handles over rings any day of the week. Restless Gypsy saying, how much protein do you consume in a day? No idea. Don't know, don't care. I get a good amount of protein at every single meal. And when I'm really dialing in my training and feeling good with everything, I typically will add more. And that's it. That's all I really need to know. It's just more when I need it and can use it. And for the most part, is my dietary approach is always concerned with your 3 Ps: protein, plant, and portion size. You get those 3 dialed in your meal, one meal after another, and you get that. And for the most part, you don't need to worry about anything else for nutrition. It all is just little tweaks and modifications from then on out. I honestly couldn't tell you how much protein I consume. Like I said, don't know, don't care. Probably not going to make a difference if I started tracking anyway. So focusing on fat loss first can be a detrimental thing for several reasons. First and foremost is because a lot of conventional approaches to fat loss are not healthy, they're not sustainable, and they're sure as hell not going to do a whole lot for your physique, even if you do lose some fat. And that's even if that happens, because the vast majority of people, unfortunately, who will try to lose weight won't. They'll struggle with losing body fat. And even the fat that they do lose, it's probably not going to be as much as they want. And even a lot of what they do lose, they're probably going to regain it back and stuff. So this is why a lot of times when people focus too much on body fat reduction solely for that, which conventionally usually means diets, lots of food restriction, and lots of cardio. And that's not a bad strategy. You certainly can lose body fat from that. I've certainly done it. Lots of people have been successful, but that's not the best way to really build up a beautiful, strong physique. You're just going to be a smaller version of what you have now. Moreover, that's also assuming that you're successful at it. Lots of times when people are like, I'm going to start to lose weight, that can be a journey that is years and years and years long. There are people I know now who are still struggling with their weight, and they're like, I'm going to start losing weight. And they said that over 10 years ago. So you're basically saying, okay, I'll become athletic and I'll focus on a healthy diet and I'll focus on building muscle and I'll do all these other things once I lose the weight. Well, we could be talking about something that's not going to happen for another 5 to 10 years, even if it happens at all. So you're basically putting everything off and on the back burner until you accomplish that one thing. And so that's why a lot of times people will just perpetually struggle with weight. And a lot of times when people are focusing on like, I'm in health and fitness. No, you're focusing on fat loss. And that has, in most cases, very little to do with health and fitness, especially since a lot of times it's about restrictive and fad diets and abusive use of caloric expenditure and cardio and things like that. That is not health and fitness. You're basically trying to lose body fat exclusively. And this is one of the reasons why, like, now we've got the weight loss drugs and everything. And I don't agree with a lot of my colleagues who kind of like snub their nose up and they're like, oh, fat loss drugs, everybody wants a shortcut and everybody wants a magic pill. And they kind of like look down on folks who are trying to use the weight loss drugs for easier weight loss and stuff. And I have the opposite approach, the perspective to things. It's like, one, I've always said, like, fat loss should be non-existent in a fitness and healthy lifestyle context. Like, the best thing we can do as an individual, but also as a society, is to get the whole fat loss and weight management thing done, over with, and you never have to think about it again. Because the fact of the matter is, health and fitness is about your, well, health and fitness. And fat loss is about losing body fat. And that's somewhat correlated and tied in a little bit to health and fitness. But believe me, this whole health and fitness thing is a heck of a lot easier and a lot more effective and a heck of a lot more rewarding when you take the whole fat loss thing completely off the table. You don't have to worry about calories. You don't have to worry about body fat. You don't have to worry about the number on the scale. The faster and sooner you can get the whole fat loss thing just done, taken care of, and over with, then you can actually focus on real health and fitness sort of things. And that's why I'm not against the drugs or anything. I know there's a lot we still have to be concerned with and consider with those and stuff. But believe me, if there was a magic pill that instantly made people just lose all the body fat that they wanted and got that taken care of, I'd be all for it. The gym is not a fat loss spa. Health and fitness is not about weight loss. It's not about body fat reduction. Never has been and never will be, and we shouldn't treat it as such. Exercise is not a reliable, effective way to solely directly manage body fat levels. A healthy diet has nothing to do with body fat levels. It's a correlative thing. It is related a little bit. So I misspoke. It's not something we shouldn't say. It has nothing to do with it. But I want to get the whole fat loss thing just taken care of, done and over with as quickly as possible. It should not be part of our conversation. That would be a great thing. But the best way to do that is to reverse the entire process. Is instead of saying, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to diet like crazy, I'm going to get rid of all the processed foods, I'm going to do tons of cardio, I'm going to lose this body fat, and after that, then I'm going to start hiking, then I'm going to learn martial arts, then I'm going to start building muscle. I recommend the opposite approach. Instead, what we should do is look to building first for several reasons. First and foremost is that strength training and building muscle and strength is something that should just be part of the conversation all the time for everybody to at least some degree. I'm not saying you got to train like a bodybuilder and spend a lot of time in the gym, but regardless of your goals, regardless of your lifestyle, regardless of your health and fitness objectives, strength training should just be there. In my opinion, strength training should be like brushing your teeth or proper hygiene levels and stuff. It's something we should all be implementing to some degree all the time for everybody. Literally, that could just be, I just do some countertop push-ups and I hang from a pull-up bar. It's like, great, good, just that. But building muscle and strength is one of the single biggest assets that we can acquire to help us achieve everything when it comes to health and fitness. Anecdotally and scientifically, the research for decades has shown that if you want to achieve anything when it comes to health and fitness, muscle and strength is key. And the more you're putting off the types of habits that help promote muscle and strength, the more you're making everything you want to achieve an uphill battle, whether you want to improve performance, your general health, your longevity, your vitality, everything, even mental things like staving off depression, improving cognitive function, coordination, the ability to manage stress. Like, so many things are improved if we include strength training to some degree. So the biggest point that I want you to take away from today's episode is don't put off strength training. If you're strength training, stay strength training. If you're not strength training, get on it. Start strength training. Even if it's, like I said, just a couple of basic exercises, takes you a few minutes, a few times a week, that by far pays dividends. That's why I'm a big believer in things like calisthenics, because to me, I long ago started to develop the belief of strength training always has to be there. no matter who you are, no matter what your goals are and stuff, strength training has to always be a part of the strategy. And it can never stop. And it can never, you don't take a break for the summer. You don't, have something where it's like you're on and for a few months and then off for the rest of the year and stuff. It is, in my opinion, like as important as anything else, as important as showering, as important as sleep, as important as everything else, which is why a lot of times the high maintenance approaches to strength training, like you got to go to a gym, you got to have 15 different exercises for every muscle group, and you got to have all these complicated programs and stuff. Like, no, that's not going to work as a practical strategy for most people. That's like saying you've got to take care of your teeth, you got to have good dental hygiene, so you have to go to the dentist every single week. Like, no, that's not practical. That's not going to work for most people. And yet, that's exactly what we do for working out and what we recommend that people do when it comes to their strength training. And that's why I'm a big fan of calisthenics. I had a guy this morning even ask me, is like, so what's your workout program like? I'm like, honestly, dude, I'm lucky if I get 10 to 15 minutes in several times a week, if that. And he's like, but look at your physique. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't take as much as you think it does. It doesn't take nearly as long for your workout. You don't need to have 15 different push-up variations. Basically, like I wrote in my ebook that you can still, I'm pretty sure it's still available. Push, pull, squat, 3 moves. If you get those 3 moves a few times a week, boom, you're good. That's going to cover most of your bases for everything you're ever going to need. Push, pull, squat. And so when it comes to the importance of, building muscle, I'm looking at it backwards. A lot of people spend a lot of their life and focus their energy and attention on fat loss and managing weight, and the strength and building muscle and stuff is secondary. And I'm saying we got to reverse it. Strength and building muscle and maintaining a good, strong, resilient body should be a top priority in any health and fitness program. And the sooner we can make the whole weight loss and weight management thing a distant past in memory, the better. Because that's where I'm at now. Like, I don't care about the scale. I don't worry about gaining fat. I don't care about managing my weight. I don't count calories. I just was asked, how much protein do you eat? Don't know, don't care. I don't give a damn about what I'm eating. I've got a much higher purpose with my diet. And believe me, it wasn't always that way. I come from a background with a lot of disordered eating habits, obsessive compulsive workout plans, where I used to have my day ruined because I ate a single French fry, where I was so anxious and compulsively guilty about everything that I put in my mouth. And now that's in the past. And believe me, my life is a hell of a lot better. My health is a lot better. My body looks a lot better. The faster I got out of that hole, I got to manage my weight. I got to burn calories. I got to make sure I'm not getting fat. The sooner I got past that, my life so much better. And that's what I want for you, because this whole health and quality of life kind of thing is so much better when you just don't have to worry about that sort of thing anymore. But I'm rambling on a little bit. Let's get to some more of these questions. They're coming in fast and furious. I love it. What do you think about caffeine consumption? I love it. I am a big fan. Basically, caffeine is the wonder drug that we all thought we needed when it comes to fitness. When we've got these weight loss drugs out there, semaglutide and everything. And, that's a whole nother story. But people are like, what do you think about weight loss drugs? I'm like, I've always loved it. I've been taking a weight loss drug since I was a teenager. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, caffeine. If we didn't have caffeine, we'd have to invent it. Caffeine is the ultimate, purest wonder drug when it comes to health and fitness. It does everything we need and want it to do. It improves performance. It improves cognitive focus. It improves your ability to lift and build muscle in the gym. It decreases your appetite. It can help you regulate your body fat levels. Everything we want from health and fitness is improved with caffeine. Now, of course, like any drug, it can be abused, absolutely. But always recognize that it's not the use of the drug, it's the abuse of the drug that's problematic. So having a couple of cups of coffee a day, fine. I'm an energy drink guy. I drink, I've always been a big Monster energy drink guy. I drink a Monster most every day. It's 180 milligrams of caffeine. That's a couple of cups of coffee right there. So I know a lot of people give me, criticize me for it and stuff. I'm like, there's more caffeine in that quad shot Latte Macco Frappo Laco, whatever you got from Starbucks. and there's a lot more chemicals in that, and there's a lot more sugar and everything else, but it's basically going around the same thing. So I love caffeine. Of course, you have to listen to your body. Some people are extremely sensitive to it. Some people don't do so well with caffeine, in which case, to hell with what I say. If you're like, oh, it doesn't make me feel good, I get so jittery or something, it's like, well, then you listen to your body. Remember, your body's going to give you plenty of feedback on what's actually best for you, not what you hear some jack off on YouTube saying. Saeed, it's good to talk to you. Hey, Matt, I started to track my calories despite not being accurate, but I get a measure. Yeah, exactly. Calorie tracking is extremely hard to do with any degree of measure of accuracy, but it is something to do to check in once in a while. Sometimes it can be enlightening. I don't log exercise. How many calories does medium intensity calisthenics training burn, though? Who the hell knows, my friend? This is the thing about calorie tracking that's so incredibly hard to do, is because being able to get anything, even a rough estimated ballpark of caloric expenditure is, well, let's just say it's so darn hard, I almost don't even bother with it. Because there are so many factors that are involved. Your body weight is involved, your muscle mass is involved, intensity is involved, your mental and emotional attitude in a point is involved. I used to be a mountain bike racer, so my calorie numbers would change depending on course conditions. If it was muddy, then that would mean I'd have to burn more calories per lap to ride through the mud versus the hard packed dirt. If there's a headwind, I'm doing that. Depends on your range of motion, depends on your sets and reps, depends on your rest period, depends on the temperature, depends on humidity, depends on a lot of things, which is why I would say, don't worry about it. Don't even worry about your number. I used to have a friend in college who was an obsessive calorie tracker, and she literally counted the number of times she would climb the stairs up to her dorm room. I remember we went down, we were going to go out, downtown one time, and we got down to like the street level, and she's like, oh, shoot, I forgot my ID. Hang on. So she went up and she got her ID in her apartment or her dorm room. She came down and I was like, okay, great. And she's like, hang on. And she took out a notebook. I'm like, okay, that's another 2 times that I climbed up the stairs, and we're walking downtown. And how many miles do you think that is? And what do you think our pace is going to be? It's like, man, what a pain in the neck to get right, to get with any accuracy. So that's why I say don't worry about it. And don't worry about tracking the calories you burn in your actual activity. Just make your activity somewhat consistent. And in the same measure, make your diet fairly consistent as well. If your habits are fairly consistent, then it's relatively easy to recognize a change or a delta in what you're doing. And that's what's important, is a change, is what is the general change in what your consumption is or your expenditure. And that's going to be the thing that's going to be responsible for losing weight, building yourself up, or maintaining right there. So I would say don't even bother with it, because I have no idea, to be perfectly honest with you. Cyril Belma saying, Matt, should one might have weight on the front part of the foot, the back part of foot when doing squatting and lunging exercises? Very good question. I always tell people, keep your weight to the front of your heel or the backside of the arch of your foot, for several reasons. Because you need some weight on the ball of your foot, because that's where a lot of your control comes from. You want good tension in your calves. That helps to eliminate a lot of knee stress and give you a lot more stability. But you also get a lot of power through your heel. So if you're going one side or the other, either all on the ball or all on the heel, you're going to miss out somewhere. So that's why I say front of the heel or the back of the arch. That way you've got a good amount of weight on your heel for power, but you still have enough on the ball of your foot for control and stability. Excuse me. Hey, El Painter. We talked yesterday saying, how does sleep factor in fat loss? Huge, massive. In fact, I usually will tell people, make sure your sleep is on point before you make sure your diet is on point, because your sleep is huge ripple effects through both your diet and your exercise habits, of course. So that's why you want to make sure that your sleep is one of those things that you have in control. Because a lot of times your caloric balance for fat loss is down to a hell of a lot more than diet and exercise. a lot more than diet and exercise. So if you're only focusing on diet and exercise, you're basically looking into a room through a keyhole and you're like, yep, I got the entire picture clear and I can see everything. No, you don't. You've got so much you're leaving on the table. It's crazy. And sleep is probably the biggest factor in sending a ripple effect through everything. Your hormones, your blood sugar regulation, your mental focus, your emotional state. Don't discredit emotional states. So much of your ability to have a healthy body comes from healthy mind and emotional state for sure. So sleep is huge, my friends, huge. So when you are looking at your habits, and this is the point that I wanted to make, is lots of times when people focus first on fat loss, they'll basically be like, okay, I will allow my hormones to go to hell. I will allow my diet to become unhealthy. I will use exercise to an unhealthy and possibly even an abusive level. They will basically compromise many things about health and fitness for the sake of trying to lose body fat, which can work, but it's usually temporary and it's usually produces temporary results because remember, your body, your mind has your survival as a higher priority than what you look like naked. So that's why a lot of times we can go so far when it comes to, I'm going to try to lose body fat and I'm going to just destroy myself in the process of doing it. But you can only do it for so long because, that whole survival instinct kind of kicks in. So here's the approach that I have instead is first and foremost, like I said earlier, if you haven't been strength training, start. If you are strength training, stay on it and make sure it's easily maintainable. Is that a word? Yeah, easily something you can stay consistent with. Again, my mindset is I've got to be able to strength train on a regular basis, most every week of my entire life, no matter what. That's why I turned to calisthenics, because when I was always going to the gyms and I had high maintenance workout programs, I'd be like, this is really hard to maintain. This is sometimes really difficult for me to keep going at. And I was like, well, then I'm going to have a hard time sticking with it. And therefore, that's not acceptable. So that's why micro workouts, calisthenics, push, pull, squat, all of these strategies I developed over the years, not just to, sell books and stuff. It's just for me. It's like I want strength training to stay a part of my regular routine as easy as possible. Because in my mind, at least, that is 100% necessary. I will give up most other things in my life. I will give up caffeine. I will give up football. Go Bills. I will give up mountain biking. I will give up everything else that I do before I potentially give up strength training. It's an absolute 100% life or death necessity in my mind. So that's why I was like, well, I'd better make it as easy as possible to maintain, right? So that's why it's like strength training, get on it, stay on it kind of thing. Second of all, when it comes to diet, focus first on a healthy diet versus a fat loss diet. And there's a number of reasons for this. Again, it's a survival thing. Your body is much more interested in keeping you alive than making you lean. So when we typically look at building up muscle and stuff, we generally err on a healthier diet than when we're looking at fat loss. A lot of times the rhetoric in our fitness culture gets that backwards. We think anything that makes us lose weight is inherently healthier because we've associated now losing body fat with health. But it wasn't always that way. A lot of times, if you were losing a lot of weight and stuff, people assumed you were sick, that was a bad thing, and that putting on a little bit of fat or getting a little bit heftier was a sign of wealth and good health and stuff. And so that's why a lot of times when people are like, I want to build muscle, I want to build up my body a little bit, they'll typically have a more satisfying diet. Because remember that a healthy diet isn't one that makes you lean or gives you abs or anything. It's one that satisfies your fundamental appetites. Your appetite for hunger and metabolic support, your appetite for need for nutritional support, of course. And of course, yes, even hedonic support. Perpetual cravings and preoccupation with food is usually a sign that you have an unhealthy diet because you're not satisfying your needs adequately enough. So typically when folks are focusing on building their body up, they also have a healthier diet. They're eating more whole foods. They're eating portion sizes that are satisfying their hunger. They're not starving themselves. They're not depriving themselves and stuff. But you still want to focus on a good nutrient dense food. You want to make sure you're getting a lot of value for what you're eating. You're not eating a bag of Doritos and calling that lunch. You're having a very wholesome meal. So that's where I often recommend people start with that. I don't care if you got 50 pounds of body fat to lose and everything. Start there. Start there. Why? Because again, muscle and strength are great assets for doing everything, including losing body fat. And having a healthy diet is a great asset for then making it a lot easier to lose weight later on, because you're not addressing your diet from an unhealthy perspective. Because whenever your habits are unhealthy, you're essentially going to start fighting yourself. Your body is naturally going to start fighting against what you're doing because it has your survival more as a priority than the changes you're trying to make. And I'm not saying like you should build muscle and have a healthier diet and then several years later focus on fat loss, because a lot of times when people start working out with strength training and they start having a real wholesome, satisfying diet, a lot of times that naturally accompanies fat loss anyway. So you're looking at, well, I'm trying to build up my muscles and I'm improving just my diet to be healthier overall and satisfy my appetites. A lot of times people will just lose body fat and have a more normal regulated body fat level naturally without even trying. So you may not even need to do anything for the fat loss thing. It may just happen automatically, which is in many cases the ideal scenario. Like I said earlier, the fat loss and fat regulation and weight regulation thing ideally gets to a point where it's nothing you even need to concern yourself with. You don't have to think about it. It's not something that is something you focus on. It just happens automatically on autopilot. And you're like, yeah, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Ideally, that's the point we're at. So then you can focus on more satisfying things like I'm interested in riding my bike faster and being a better martial artist, and building some muscle and satisfying myself with my diet. I don't need to worry about fat loss and body weight regulation and stuff. There's no more stress about that. So you may very well just take care of the whole fat loss thing anyway. And even if you don't, you're probably going to lose some degree of body fat. So you're already maybe halfway there. And then you just got a little bit more to cut up to take off. But then you've got the strength and the muscle and the healthy diet as a foundation. And then you can just take care of the rest with some simple calorie hacking strategies, where you start to decrease your overall portion sizes, your caloric intake, maybe increase your caloric expenditure if you like, and then you're good. And then that takes care. It's a hell of a lot easier to do that when you've got a healthy diet and muscle and strength in your wheelhouse. If you're not strong physically and you're not having a satisfying, healthy diet, then trying to go after the fat loss at the expense of the health of your diet and your well-being is just an uphill battle, which is why a lot of people rebound backwards anyway. So muscle and strength, satisfying diet first, my friends, and then let the whole fat loss thing start to be more of a secondary characteristic, even if it needs to be one at all, which it very well may not need to be. Creatine, pros and cons from Moy. Yeah, there's not really any cons to it. Remember, creatine doesn't do anything that doesn't already happen to begin with. You're already synthesizing creatine. You're already replenishing your creatine stores. So when you consume creatine as a supplement, you're just replenishing them faster. So that means it's pretty good as a safe alternative. Whether or not it actually does anything depends on whether or not replenishing them a little faster is going to be beneficial to you. So for the most part, it's either one of those things that will be beneficial or not do much of anything. I haven't really heard. Sometimes you'll get some fear mongering out there about something. I mean, you'll always have fear mongering over anything. There's people who say that drinking water is a bad idea and stuff. But for the most part, creatine is one of those things that probably is not going to do a whole lot for you, because a lot of people aren't working out enough or hard enough to really make it all that necessary. But even if you do, yeah, sure, go for it. It's one of the few supplements that could potentially actually be beneficial. Molly saying, during the sleep, you indeed burn calories, even when you sit the whole day. Yeah, you're always burning. A lot of times when people have asked me, like, what do you do to burn fat? I'm like, just keep breathing. Remember that diet and exercise habits don't do anything. They don't make anything happen. A lot of times there's rhetoric in our fitness culture that when you engage in certain habits, this was a big thing with like intermittent fasting of like, oh, now you make this happen in your body and that happen in your body, and you throw this switch and you make this. No, no. Everything that we need to have happen for our body to change or make what we want happen is always happening completely on autopilot. You're always burning fat and calories. You're always having protein synthesis going on. You're always doing everything you want. What diet and exercise habits do is they just simply speed up or slow down the rate at which these things are happening. That's it. That's all you're doing. So you're not really doing all that much when you engage in healthy habits. You're not making something new happen, or this never happens until you're in a fasted state, or this never happens until you've done at least 20 minutes of cardio and stuff. No, that's simply not true. That's not how the body works. So it doesn't mean that diet and exercise isn't worthwhile. It just means that it doesn't bring you anything unique to the table. That's all. It just simply means, yeah, you're burning fat and calories. You're burning fat and calories at a faster rate when you go out for a run. That's all you're doing. Same thing with building like muscle up. When you put your muscles against mechanical resistance, you're stimulating this faster muscle protein synthesis. That's it. When you really understand the fundamental nature of things, like as I cover in my book, Be Fit and Live Free, you recognize that there's really not a whole lot to the story out there. And that a lot of the marketing messages in our fitness culture have made things seem a lot more complicated and a lot more fancy mumbo jumbo. Again, oftentimes to try to convince you to buy things that aren't really in your best interests. Joseph Bello saying, find it hard to gain weight. I want to gain a few pounds of muscle. I've gained some weight and looks like it, a little more muscle I eat to satisfy and push the exercise. Any ideas? So you can always, again, with diet, as I was saying about fat loss, you can do the same thing in the other direction, is eat more. Because remember, we often think that being in a caloric balance is this static point, like let's say 2,000 calories a day. And therefore, if I eat another 300 calories, now I'm in a calorie surplus. Or if I go down, I'm going to be in a calorie deficit. But being in a homeostatic calorie balance is not a static point. Your body's always going to adjust. So if you eat more, it can potentially level up. You eat less, it'll bring yourself back down. You're always going to return back to that homeostatic point sooner or later. So when people are trying to build muscle, sometimes it behooves them to eat more. Especially if you're looking to eat a little bit more, as far as sometimes I get snacky, or I'm worried about gaining body fat. What should I do? It's like, sure, go ahead, eat a little bit more. But it is important to recognize that the stimulus for building muscle doesn't come from food. That's just supplying raw materials to your body. So a lot of times it's a matter of pushing harder in the gym, pushing ourselves to a higher degree, making sure that the muscle tissue itself is the limiting factor with our exercises. We want to stimulate hypertrophy through basically making the muscle itself need to tap out. Whereas like, okay, I'm going to make my muscle push to a degree where it's like having trouble contracting a bit more. And that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. I'm not saying that's always possible with your workouts. I mean, for me personally, my life has been kind of a little helter-skelter. Starting in December, of course, I did the daily videos for the Red Delta Project Advent Calendar. Then I had travel for the holidays, and then I got sick and everything like that. So I would say out of a given year, I probably spend about 6 to 8 total weeks in the entire year where my lifestyle and my mental state and emotional state and physical state and everything are lined up enough where I can give any serious muscle building a shot. The rest of the time, I'm just hanging on for dear life because I just don't have the energy. I don't have the motivation. I don't have the time. I don't have the ability to really push myself that hard in the gym. So yeah, I would say, I'm trying to do better this year, but remember that you're going to spend the majority of your career in a plateau when it comes to fitness. You're not going to make a whole lot of progress most of the time because the amount of work and effort and focus and motivation and intensity required to make progress, especially exponentially the further you get, is so high that it's just not going to be something you're going to be able to manage for a large period of time, because everything else is going to potentially inhibit you there. So that could be just the case there, Joseph. It could just be that, you're still waiting to level things up where you can push much harder in the gym, where you can theoretically double your effort. And it may not be the case right now where you can do that. I know that certainly isn't the case for me. In the physical state that I'm in right now, I got so much stuff going on. I'm not building muscle now, no matter how hard I work and stuff. I just lack the capacity to push myself that hard. There's just no way I'm going to do that. So I'm waiting until, I am in that state, until I do feel better, until I do have that kind of motivation. And then it's going to be game on for sure. So it could just simply be the case of, well, maybe you just need to level things up and it's just not possible right now. And so you hold the fort, still go after the benefits that you can get, and basically bide your time until you can just blast the mother living hell out of it. Dan Osek, it's good to see you, my friend. Saying, Matt, ideas on reverse dieting, quote unquote, never made any sense to me. Plus, is regimented, that could not be accurate. Am I missing something? Reverse dieting basically means you're coming off the diet to a degree, and you're finally actually feeding yourself. And so a lot of, again, in our dietary culture, we have this idea that dieting is a normal, natural, healthy thing to do. And over the years, I've come to the belief that no, it's actually not good for you. You shouldn't diet unless you need to. Lots of times, the reverse dieting is something that is implemented by those who do implement diets for the sake of competition. Getting ready for a photo shoot. Is someone who's going after really strict restrictions in order to step on stage or get their physique to that last 1%, which takes an ungodly amount of work for at least several weeks, if not several months. So then when they're after the show, reverse dieting, the idea is, instead of just saying, okay, I'm done, I'm just going to eat, nothing but junk food and gorge myself like crazy, which can be hard on body, mind, and lifestyle, they'll reverse it a little bit and back off. So okay, I'm going to add some more food in. I'm going to add some more carbohydrate. I'm going to basically back off a little bit more, which I think has probably some good health implications to it as well. But for the most part, it goes down to, well, if you're not dieting to begin with, you don't need to worry about reverse dieting because you're already eating healthy to begin with. So that's the approach that I would take. Oh, excuse me. Still a little bit of crud getting through, folks. I'm just happy I could talk to you with my normal voice again. It was over a week or 10 days I couldn't even talk with a good voice. Sev, good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Hey, Matt, I have a dip station in rings. How would you recommend training pull? Been doing rows and I sit pull-up progression, trying to work on I sit pull-up. Yeah, very good. So depends on how high you can get those rings, my friend. The rings are a fantastic pull-up option if you can get them high enough. But I don't know what you're hanging them from. So I would, if I were you, look around your environment, maybe even your outdoor environment. Maybe there's a park near where you are where they got a really nice high pull-up bar. Down the street from where I live here, I've got, there's a grade school, and they've got one of those 3-level pull-up stations out by the soccer field. And one of them is, it's a good 8 feet tall pull-up bar. So I throw my NOS suspension straps over that, and I can bring my handles up high enough that I can do pull-ups and stuff. I would do that if I were you. And that, yeah, the rows are definitely a good option there as well. Check out progressive rows as well. So you got archer rows, back and forth, single arm rows that you can play around with. A lot of people discredit, or they just kind of poo-poo the idea of doing rows, assuming that the pull-up is the be-all end-all of pulling exercises. But there's a lot of value and a lot of progress that can be made from just from rowing movements, especially if you make them progressive. Maybe you can invest in a weight vest or something. Or I've even had clients where they'll do rows and they'll have a partner put their hands on their collarbones or something, and they'll just apply manual pressure onto their torso. And so they're doing rows, and the person can, add extra resistance manually. And maybe that can be an option as well. You got a lot of options for you, my friend. You got a lot of good things that can be going after what you want for generating that resistance to stimulate the hypertrophy. So good ideas. And creativity. I like the setup you have, the rings, the dip stand. You got a lot you can do with that. Joseph Bello said, Matt, what do you think of staying in the 10 to 20 rep range and either make the exercise harder or do harder variations, which can include the isometrics using weight in some exercises? Yeah, you're always going to have your rep ranges that you prefer to work in. Some people prefer to go with a higher repetition like that. Some people like to go and stay lower. I personally like to make sure that I'm well below 10 for my strength exercises. So I'm always using pull up and dip and push up and squatting variations. If I can get 10, 12 fairly easily, I'm like, all right, more resistance. I like to keep it heavy. So that way I'm generating a lot of tension in the muscle to try to build strength. But then when I'm going after my finisher moves, like in grind style calisthenics, yeah, at least 10, well above 10. And my general range though, if like 20, if I could do more than 20 of something, too easy, too light. I need it harder. I could do 20 of these push-ups easy. It's like, well, then we need something harder kind of thing. So I like that range. It's good. Maybe play around with single digit stuff. Stuff in the 6 to 8 rep range can be really interesting if you want to focus a little bit more on building strength. But that 10 to 20 is a good sweet spot. My buddy Al coming on saying, we talked yesterday, advice for some to train multiple planes of motion for softball, 3 to 4 exercises. And what do you have someone who wants to train multiplanar movements to build strength power for rotation to play softball? This is something that gets a lot of over approach, overthinking for a lot of people. So you find this sometimes with golf conditioning exercises where they'll have like someone build out a program that's an hour and a half of rotational movements, largely unnecessary, because for the most part, general strength and conditioning is most of what you need to cover for application over to sport anyway. So if long as you got your basic, fundamental movement patterns covered, then you're going to be fine. Because remember that if you want to be strong in a particular sport or activity, it's the actual sport or activity that builds the strength for that thing. When you are doing your strength and conditioning, that's ensuring that you don't have any weaknesses, any imbalances, and you're basically building up a general pool of strength that you can use in the application for that. I would say for the most part though, make sure you're training on your lateral chain, of course, side planks, just to make sure that a lot of the muscles along your spine and your lumbar region in your hips are well conditioned for resilience and power transfer. That way you can have a good amount of drive from your legs up through your core into your upper body for things like pitching, swinging a baseball or softball, and of course throwing. So for the most part, your general strength and conditioning will be just fine. Make sure you're including your lateral stuff, and then it's off to the batting cages with you. So when it comes to the body recomposition, you may be asking, but I've got a lot of body fat to lose. Shouldn't I start to focus on that first, just because that's where I could make the most improvement? And to a degree, maybe, but we almost want to have body fat regulation as a little bit more of a side effect, if you will. So again, if you start to focus on strength training, building some muscle, and having a healthy diet, don't worry about calories, don't worry about, what about fasting and everything. Don't even try to lose weight just yet. Just focus on getting those foundational things done, because building up the muscle and strength and having a satisfying, healthy approach to food will give you that foundation where you're no longer setting off the alarm bells when you do try to lose weight. One of my most successful weight loss stories that I'm around these days, a client of mine who's lost well over 40 pounds over the past year, and he's kept it off very reliably and very regularly. And he's taken much of this approach where he's been strength training with me the entire time. He's been getting stronger and making progress there. He's also been making his diet very wholesome and satisfying. A lot of plant-based foods, making sure he's getting good protein, things of that nature. And he's also implementing, of course, calorie hacking. And the strategy that he uses, a little bit more long-term than what I talk about in my book, but what he does is he will cut down on his caloric intake, portion size. He's not like eliminating food groups or anything like that. He's just like, I'm just eating less of what I normally eat. And he will do that for as long as he comfortably can, as he would say, where he's like, I'll do it for as long as I can reasonably and relatively easily do it. And sometimes the duration is about 4 weeks, sometimes it's 6. I think the longest he ever did was 2 months, and he's losing about a pound a week or so, 3/4 of a pound a week. And so it's just reliably chunking down. But then he starts to notice, it's like, okay, this is getting hard. Okay, my energy level is starting to really suffer. My focus is suffering. My sleep is starting to suffer. My ability to recover from my strength workouts is starting to suffer. When he notices that, he stops. He's like, I'm done trying to lose weight. It doesn't mean he goes off the wagon. He's like, I'm just going to eat nothing but junk food and overindulge all the time. Then he just brings his caloric intake back up. He increases his portion sizes, takes off the stress of basically reverse dieting, if you will, right? That's what he does. And he maintains where he's at, and he'll stay there for, his rule of thumb is twice the amount of time as he was losing the weight to begin with. So if he was spending 6 weeks in the caloric deficit losing the weight, he will spend 12 weeks when he is in maintenance mode. But even then, that's a general rule of thumb, because he won't start to try to lose weight again until he feels like he's getting his situation set, like I was saying earlier. Like, I can be able to build muscle, but I've got to have a number of my proverbial ducks in a row. If I'm under constant stress and I'm hectic and I have no time and no motivation and no focus and everything, then it's like, no, I'm not even going to try to build much muscle right now. It's just not in the cards for me. He'll do the same thing. They're like, well, 12 weeks is over, but the kids are sick and I'm just getting over this huge thing at work, and I just don't want to do this right now. He won't. He'll wait and he'll bide his time, and he'll be like, okay, now I'm ready to go. Now the weather's good, so I can get outside for long walks and hikes. Now I feel like I can do this. Now I'm motivated. Bang. Then he hits it again. So that's why, again, he's got his diet and his strength training and his lifestyle habits and stuff. They're already set. They're already in a healthy place. The weight loss is the secondary thing that he's focused on, even though in the back of his mind, his goal may be, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight. He's not making it the number one priority of what he's basing his habits off of. Excuse me. Adam coming on saying, Matt, thoughts on like cardio translating to running? I swim about a mile in slow pace on a daily basis in the summer. A few months ago, I had a run a few hundred meters in the to the railway tracks, stations, excuse me, as I left a couple minutes late. I think I did well despite I never ran. Yeah. So we're talking about getting the body used to the activity that you're doing, right? So if I'm not a runner, like I can't run for beans, and yet I'm going to have to learn to run to at least some degree, because I kind of got into this, not so much a bet, but a challenge with several friends of mine to do a triathlon later this summer, a little sprint triathlon. I can't swim for hell. Running is certainly not my forte, so I can ride. I don't need to necessarily train for that. It's just a 17-mile bike ride. That's easy. But yeah, I'm going to have to run. And well, I don't know how you're doing that light. As they say, easy run is an oxymoron. It's going to be hard no matter how you do it. But yeah, if you're doing it to any degree, you're getting your body used to so many of the demands of the activity. It's just the intensity isn't there. Are you losing out by not having the higher level of intensity? Yeah, because you're going to have to train for the intensity naturally. But you're getting so many other things like the coordination and the activation of your muscle groups and the mental and emotional state of just being able to do the activity itself. There's so many things you're still training, even though you're doing at a lower level of intensity. If I do side kicks in Taekwondo at less than full speed, full power, I'm still training like 95% of what makes a side kick a side kick. So then if I decide to really train really hard, hitting a punching bag or going as fast as I can, that's just a little bit extra. So the lighter stuff, believe it or not, really does provide quite a bit of stimulus, even though we often think incorrectly so, as I learned the hard way, that effort means effectiveness. And a lot of times it's not so much the effort as what you're doing. I tell clients all the time, again, with the strength training, I was like, look, you get a lot of benefit of the exercise, even if it's not the hardest thing in the world, even if you're not taking yourself to gut busting intensity where you're peeling yourself off the ground with a set of push ups. So when people are like, oh, push ups, on the floor and everything, I just don't have the motivation. I'm like, do them on the kitchen counter. Do 15 push-ups on the kitchen counter. Even if though it doesn't feel like it's all that hard and pushing yourself to limit, there's a lot of benefit there because a lot of the value of the push-up comes from the movement pattern that you're doing, not necessarily just the intensity. So it's still worthwhile to do things on a lighter, easier scale, for sure. You don't necessarily need to be going all out all the time. And that's one of the things that gets us in trouble a lot when it comes to sustainability with our diet and exercise habits. It's like, I have to destroy myself. I have to leave it all in the gym. I have to destroy, my muscles. I have to exhaust myself and stuff. Again, this is usually the characteristic, as I used to have, of someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Because when you don't understand the fundamental objectives you're training for, then you're basing your judgment of how effective your training is based on pure effort and intensity. But there's a number of ways that I can make your workouts and your diet habits and everything extremely hard and not at all the slightest bit more effective than if you did an easier approach. Again, the whole eat to satisfy thing, a lot of people don't like that advice. When I talk about satisfy your hunger, eat foods you enjoy, you shouldn't have to battle constant hunger and craving stuff. People don't like that advice. They want things to be hard because they don't know what they're doing. I used to rage against such advice myself back in the day, where I would basically be killing myself with diet and exercise habits. I would literally just do things for the sake of putting myself through pain. I would go and work out in the hottest time of the day without water in a hoodie like this because it made me suffer more. Didn't do anything for my actual results, but it made me suffer more. I always fell into the lure of a lot of very restrictive diet habits because they were hard. It was really hard to cut out whole food groups. It was really hard to say, I'll never eat pizza and French fries again. It was really, really hard to follow a diet. And because it was hard, I thought it was worthwhile. I thought it was going to be effective. And it wasn't. It didn't do me any good whatsoever, to do all those sorts of things. Hard work is the cheapest and easiest commodity in the world. That's why they have like slave labor and sweatshops and stuff. But when we don't understand what we're doing when it comes to what makes our diet and exercise habits actually effective, then we default into, well, I'm just going to drive myself into the ground. I'm just going to work myself to death and cross my fingers and hope it just works out. And when we get addicted to the effort, when we put our ego on that, especially, and we identify with, I'm the hardest worker in the room, I can outwork anybody kind of thing, I never take shortcuts and stuff, that sets us up in a very dangerous place because you're no longer looking for something that's actually effective. You're just looking for whatever's hard. And so a lot of times I would have coaches and even individuals who knew more than I did about true health and fitness science and research. And they'd be like, well, have a couple rest days, allow yourself to recover. Don't always restrict your diet too much. Eat, and you shouldn't be hungry all the time and all these sorts of things. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear that kind of advice. That's weak advice. Oh, these people are all wimps. These people are trying to make me weaker, and these people are everybody wants to show you. My macho ego is so frail that I have to basically make myself miserable in order to have any sense of self-worth. And now, thankfully, I've overcome all that. And I'm like, yeah, of course I want things to be easier. I want the shortcuts. I want things to be as effective as possible. And a lot of times effectiveness actually means a heck of a lot easier. It's a lot easier to build muscle and have a healthy body when you actually feed yourself and you're actually satisfying your needs and your appetites for food rather than just starving yourself and restricting yourself like crazy. So, question on TRT. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't have enough information and data to have a valid opinion about it and stuff. I mean, basically, you're taking steroids and things. So talk to your doctor is basically the advice there. Don't go on the internet. Don't go as like, what does the YouTube algorithm want to tell me about testosterone replacement therapy and all that? Who cares? First and foremost, again, go after the holistic things. When it comes to your hormone regulation, a lot of things come down to, again, are you just treating yourself well? Are you managing stress? Are you getting plenty of sleep? So much of our hormone regulation is just sleep. We were mentioning that earlier about how I would put good sleep habits well above good diet habits any day of the week, because sleep is so much tied into everything that really matters. So make sure you're getting good sleep. Make sure you're managing stress. Make sure, again, your strength training. Strength training has a big influence on our hormone regulation. So this is yet another reason why we need to be strength training to at least some degree. And a lot of times when people get older, they feel like, well, I'm not going to strength train. I'm too old for that kind of thing. No, the older you get, the more important strength training is. There's so many detrimental effects of health and fitness that happen as we age. The science is very clear on this, that we slow down or even reverse most of them through simple strength training. Again, it doesn't need to mean you got to go to a gym and have a bodybuilder program that takes you 3 hours and stuff. Push, pull, squat, man. Push, pull, squat will do wonders for you in that regard. So make sure you're checking off your boxes for managing your own health and well-being and hormones anyway. Because even if you're like, okay, my sleep sucks, my diet sucks, my workouts suck, and everything like that, if you go in and you're like, okay, get me the drugs, get me on steroids, they're still going to be like, well, make sure you're strength training, make sure you're eating well, and make sure you're sleeping anyway. So those habits are going to have to be in place anyway. And beyond that, like I said, talk to your doctor, but make sure you're managing your hormones. And you'll notice a lot of this stuff is synergistic. It's very integrated as well. It's like, I want to really make sure I'm taking care of my hormones. Yeah. You know how you do that? You take care of everything. You take care of your health and your well-being, which again is why a lot of times when people have abusive approaches to diet and exercise, and their diets are way too restrictive, and they're overtraining and they're over dieting, they're over stressing, and they're losing their hair, because they ate a cheeseburger or something, that's not healthy. And so when things are unhealthy, well, that's not going to be boding you very well for your hormone levels either. So it's one of those things that we've got to just take care of ourselves. And most of the ways that we can manage it is just general health and well-being to begin with. Jim Rat, it's good to see you, my friend. Hey, Matt, love your content. Thank you very much. And no, it's not the focus of this live, but hey, ask me anything you want, my friends. This is always an open house. I have a question about a problem you had. Yep, I'm still fighting winging scapula, even after so much effort. Any suggestions? Yes, winging scapula, definitely big problem. And a lot of times the advice out there on social media or the YouTubes and stuff is all about that serratus anterior muscle. And yes, that is part of it, but it's by no means at all the entire story, as I came to learn. A lot of times winging scapula just means an underactive back when you're utilizing particularly like push-ups and stuff. So when you do your push-ups, I'll try and show here in the video, at the top of the push-up, we've got the protraction of our shoulders. So I'm using my serratus anterior to pull my shoulders forward and back. But the other side of that coin is utilizing all of your back muscles to pull your shoulders down and back into the bottom of the push-up or the dip. So you got this shoulder motion going on where you're pulling your shoulder down and back. If you roll your shoulders down and back like this, if you roll your shoulders backwards, these circles, the activation of your back muscles to pull your shoulders down and back are the muscles you should be using in the bottom of your push-ups. And so I got a couple of videos, the beautiful strength workouts, where I'm on the floor, I lean back on my hands like I'm watching TV, as a kid, and I'm just rolling my shoulders down and back, down and back, down and back, down and back, getting those back muscles on to pull my shoulder blades down and back, and also together as well. So you're taking your shoulder blades and doing this, you're pulling them down and back. You even have a little bit of rotation. That is how I kind of overcame it. So yes, the serratus anterior is part of it, but your whole back activation and use in your pushing muscles or pushing movements is a much bigger component as a whole. All right, my friends, it has been my hour. Thank you so much for coming on. It has been a pleasure. Don't forget, check out the link down below, reddeltaproject.com, for the resources I was talking about: micro workouts, grind style calisthenics, push, pull, squat, and of course, even my ultimate minimalist fitness program that I talk about is simple, quick little ebook. It's basically 3 things that you can implement. Doesn't require any fancy equipment or any equipment at all for that matter. And it's a sound approach to strength training, diet, and lifestyle design for helping you to live your best life and get started on physical augmentation. Again, the Beautiful Strength program is trickling out. I'm still working on the official program, but it's one of those things that will be always coming out here. So make sure subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because I'm putting out these videos fast and furious, and don't want to miss any of the content that's coming out there, because I always put out all of my stuff absolutely for free here on the podcast and the YouTube channel. The books are just the condensed version of everything. So thanks again very much. If you need to reach out to me, reddeltaproject@gmail.com is how you can do that. Hope to hear from you soon, and I will see you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.